The betrayal of the three virgins. There was a kingdom called Velmora, a land known for its purity laws, sacred temples, and strict traditions. The people believed their kingdom survived because of three sacred virgins chosen by the temple at birth. These three women were not ordinary citizens. They were raised inside the Temple of Light. They were trained in silence, discipline, and obedience. They were believed to carry spiritual protection over the entire kingdom. Their names were Liora, Selene, and Mara. From childhood, they were told the same message. You are the shield of Velmora. If you remain pure, the kingdom remains safe. If you fall, the kingdom will fall. They believed it without question. Liora was the first virgin. She was calm, quiet, and deeply obedient. She followed every rule without hesitation. She believed duty was more important than desire. Selene was the second virgin. She was intelligent and observant. She questioned things in silence, but never spoke against authority. She understood the rules, but she also studied the people who made them. Mara was the third virgin. She was kind, emotional, and deeply connected to the people outside the temple. She often looked out of the temple gates and wondered about the world beyond. She believed compassion mattered more than strict rules. For years, the three lived together under strict training. They were never allowed to leave the temple alone. They were never allowed to speak to men outside sacred rituals. They were never allowed to make decisions without permission. The kingdom watched them as symbols. The priests praised them. The king trusted them. The people feared what would happen if they failed. But inside the temple, something was changing. The kingdom was also changing. Velmora was not as stable as it looked. The royal court was divided. The nobles fought for power. The army grew restless. The priests began to lose control over influence outside the temple, and whispers began to spread. Some said the virgin system was outdated. Some said the temple was controlling the kingdom through fear. Some said the three virgins were not sacred, only used as symbols. At first, Liora ignored these rumors. She believed doubt was a form of corruption. Selene listened carefully to every rumor. Mara felt afraid but said nothing. Then one night, everything changed. A royal messenger arrived at the temple. He carried a sealed letter from the king. The high priest gathered all three virgins in the inner hall. His face was pale. His voice was unstable. He opened the letter and read it aloud. The protection of Velmora is failing. The northern border has fallen into conflict. The southern villages refuse temple taxes. The council suspects betrayal inside the sacred order. The three virgins must perform the rite of renewal at the royal palace within 7 days. The room became silent. The rite of renewal had never been performed outside the temple. It was believed to connect the virgins directly to the kingdom's spiritual protection, but it was also dangerous. It required total isolation. No witnesses, no interruptions, no guarantees of survival. Liora accepted immediately. Selene asked questions. Mara looked afraid but agreed in silence. That night, Selene did something unusual. She left her room and walked to the temple archives. There she found old records that most priests were forbidden to read. What she discovered changed everything she believed. The records said the virgin system did not begin as a spiritual tradition. It began as a political tool. Long ago, a dying king had used the idea of sacred protectors to control rebellion. The three virgins were not chosen by the gods. They were chosen by priests and rulers to maintain order in the kingdom. Selene closed the book slowly. For the first time in her life, she questioned the truth she had lived inside. At the same time, Mara was outside the temple garden. She met a young healer who had been sent to deliver herbs. He spoke to her respectfully, not as a sacred symbol, but as a human being. He told her about villages suffering because of taxes imposed in the name of temple protection. He told her people were afraid, not of enemies, but of the system itself. Mara felt something break inside her understanding of the world. She returned to the temple shaken. Liora noticed the change in both of them, but she refused to believe anything was wrong. The rite of renewal began 3 days later. The three virgins traveled to the royal palace under heavy guard. The journey was silent. The people they passed bowed their heads. Some prayed, some cried, some looked away. At the palace, the king welcomed them with ceremony. The high priest prepared the ritual chamber. The room was sealed. Only the three virgins and the priest were allowed inside. The ritual began at midnight. Candles burned along the walls. Sacred symbols were drawn on stone floors. Chants filled the air. The three virgins stood at the center. The priest instructed them to enter a state of complete spiritual focus. Liora closed her eyes immediately. Selene hesitated. Mara looked around the room. Then something unexpected happened. A loud noise came from outside the chamber. The ritual guard shouted. The palace shook slightly. The priest paused but ordered the ritual to continue. Then the doors burst open. Armed soldiers entered. Not palace guards. Not temple soldiers. Unknown forces. Chaos followed instantly. The priest screamed that the ritual must not be interrupted. Liora tried to continue chanting. Selene stepped back. Mara moved toward the door. In seconds, the chamber became a battlefield. Smoke filled the room. Candles fell. Sacred symbols were destroyed. The ritual collapsed. The three virgins were separated. When the chaos ended, the priest was gone. The king had been taken from the palace, and the temple guards were accused of betrayal. Velmora fell into confusion overnight. The kingdom believed the ritual had failed because of the virgins. The people turned against them. They called them cursed. They called them false protectors. They called them the reason the kingdom was collapsing. The three virgins were arrested and held in separate chambers. Liora remained silent. Selene requested access to the royal records. Mara asked to speak to the people. All three were denied. But inside the palace, a deeper truth was forming. The attack had not been random. It had been planned. Selene discovered that several high-ranking nobles had coordinated the palace invasion. Their goal was simple: destroy the temple's authority, replace the spiritual system with military rule, and remove the influence of the virgins completely. Selene realized something worse. The virgin system itself had become a weapon used by both sides. The temple used it to control belief. The nobles used its failure to justify rebellion, and the people were trapped in the middle. Meanwhile, Mara was taken briefly to the city prison for questioning. There she saw ordinary people suffering. Not nobles, not priests, farmers, workers, families. They were not angry at the virgins. They were angry at the system that had failed them for generations. Mara understood something Selene had already begun to see. The betrayal was not only about the attack. It was about how truth had been shaped for power. Liora finally broke her silence on the fifth day. She demanded to see Selene and Mara together. For the first time since childhood, the three sat without priests or guards listening. Liora spoke first. You are both confused. The temple is truth. The ritual was sacred. The attack was punishment for disobedience. Selene replied calmly. There is no single truth here. The system we serve was built by men, not gods. Mara added softly. The people are suffering. I have seen it with my own eyes. They are not asking for rituals. They are asking for safety and fairness. Liora became angry. If we abandon the ritual, the kingdom will fall. Selene looked at her. The kingdom is already falling because we refuse to see reality. The three fell silent. For the first time, none of them had a clear answer. That night, Selene escaped her chamber using a hidden passage she had discovered earlier in the archives. She reached the palace council chamber and presented her findings. She revealed the political origins of the virgin system. She exposed the coordinated attack plan. She showed how both temple and nobles had manipulated belief. The council was shaken. Some denied it. Some confirmed parts of it. Some tried to silence her. But the truth had already spread. By morning, the city was divided. Some demanded the temple be dissolved. Some demanded the nobles be punished. Some demanded the virgins be executed. The king was still missing, and no one knew who truly controlled the kingdom. In the final moment of chaos, Mara stepped forward publicly. She walked into the city square without protection. She addressed the crowd. I am not a symbol. I am not a curse. I am a person. The system failed all of us. Not because of one betrayal, but because we stopped seeing each other as human. Her words spread quickly. People gathered. Guards hesitated. Even soldiers lowered their weapons. Liora watched from a distance, confused and broken between belief and reality. Selene stood beside Mara in the square. The three virgins, once symbols of purity, now stood as witnesses to collapse. Then news arrived. The king had been found alive. He had not been kidnapped by outsiders. He had left willingly after discovering corruption inside both the temple and the council. He had chosen silence to expose how quickly the kingdom would collapse without control. His return changed everything. He called for a full reform of the system. The Virgin program was dissolved. The temple lost its political authority. The council was reorganized. The army was restructured. And the truth about the ritual was made public. In the aftermath, Liora left the palace and returned to a quiet life away from power. Selene became part of the new advisory council, focused on law and transparency. Mara worked directly with communities affected by the old system, helping rebuild trust between people and leadership. The betrayal of the three virgins was never just about them. It was about a kingdom built on symbols instead of truth. It was about systems that survived longer than the reality they were meant to serve. It was about how belief can protect a society, but also blind it when no one questions it. And in the end, Velmora learned a hard lesson. A system that refuses to change does not stay sacred. It becomes dangerous. The story of the three virgins remained in history not as a tale of purity lost, but as a turning point where silence ended and truth finally spoke.